made, a very serious allegation, that after the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993 and the arrest of Ramzi Youssef, who's now serving a life sentence plus 200 or so years in a federal prison in Colorado, that the then administration, the Clinton administration, just sort of said, well, it was Ramzi Youssef, without looking at what some have suggested were his bosses. As you know, Laurie Milroy has suggested that he was an agent of the Iraqi government. Right. But that would be politically awkward to have to acknowledge that.
Well, I don't have any evidence one way or the other than what I've read. It seems to me that part of what we have to do now, as we focus forward on responding to this particular attack, is be sure that we don't just think that if we can get at bin Laden or get at Afghanistan, we've solved the problem. That's not. That is a symbol of the problem, but it's not the problem. We have to do what we have to do in Afghanistan and against Osama. That's the first thing that has to happen. It has to happen well. But beyond that, we've got to then build out and go after other states which support terrorism, go after cells. Bin Laden is operating in 40 different countries, including obviously the United States. We have to go to our allies and say, your ambiguity towards states like Syria and Iran and Iraq has got to stop. We got to stop seeing French and Italian businessmen getting off airplanes in Baghdad and signing contracts, and the same thing in Tehran. We have to get a new international consensus against terrorism. That's the job that now lies before our country. It's a job that is going to take years now. It's not a job of months. Even the military part of it, the first inner core without which you can't move, is going to take a very long time, as the President made clear yesterday in his radio address.
Director Woolsey, we've spoken about this before, so I know how you feel, but just to review, you're increasingly coming around to the conclusion that the first World Trade Center bombing, which Ramzi Youssef was the mastermind of, that he perhaps was an agent of the Iraqi government, and if in fact he was, what does that say about this current terrorist attack?
I think that it's a testable hypothesis whether he was an agent of Iraq or not. I think they can go back into some of the evidence in the first World Trade Center bombing, including some of the materials that are now in the hands of the British government, and see whether or not Youssef was in fact an Iraqi asset. If he was, that doesn't mean that Saddam was the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain that pulled all the levers for what happened on September 11th. But I think it would make people think a lot harder about the possibility that foreign states' intelligence services, such as Iraq and possibly Iran and other Syria and others, but Iraq would come first to mind for me, were involved. Because a lot of this looks to me as if it's not something that a fellow sitting out in the middle of Afghanistan is going to be able to orchestrate by himself, even if he has several $100 million.
General Odom, you agree?
I think the point he made about this last point is absolutely critical. To think that this operation took place purely on the basis of assets and capabilities of a non-governmental organization is not very credible with me. The intelligence support for this operation pretty clearly had to depend on some country like Iraq, Syria, Libya, who knows how many people are involved. I think the clearer intelligence picture you have of what we're up against, the more disturbed we're going to be about who our enemies are. And I think you'll find some states with very good relations with the U.S. that you will feel very ambivalent about. And it's not clear what the policy implications of this will be.
Ambassador Bremer, if you look at a range of terrorist threats now facing the United States in the aftermath of Tuesday's attacks, what are the most serious threats?
Well, the most obvious and serious one is that we haven't rolled up the entire operation that was here in the United States. We know from the press reports, at least, that the FBI believes there are some pilots missing who may have been involved in this. It's quite obvious, with more arrests again announced today, that this was a very broad operation involving dozens of people, if not hundreds of people, many of them in the United States and many of them here long term. So the most immediate threat is that we haven't seen that the other shoe is going to drop from this group. Then there's always a threat, as there always is with terrorism, of copycat operations, people who are not necessarily involved here but who think, gee, that was a great idea, I'm going to try it. And if there is a state behind this, of course, then we don't know what could be next. It could be almost anything. And of course, in counterterrorism, as in war, we usually prepare for the last battle and the last war. I mean, bin Laden moved from from attacking embassies to attacking a frigate, which we never thought was going to happen, to now attacking commercial airliners, which people hadn't anticipated. And we keep closing the barn door each time after the horse is gone. I don't know what the next one is. We got to do those things. We got to fix the aircraft security, but who knows what's next?
Director Woolsey?
I think Jerry's right, and I think that it is just essential that we go back over these past terrorist events and look carefully at all the evidence to see where the strands of proof lead. We haven't done that yet. The Bush administration is not the one that made these mistakes. If they were made, it can have a fresh start, it can have a fresh look, and it really should.
How worried, General Odom, this will be the last word, how worried should the American public be right now?
Well, I think you should be worried about the things that Ambassador Bremer mentioned. Those were the first one that come to my mind. But I don't think the American public ought to wring its hands and become excessively frightened. I am really impressed with what I see of the American public's reaction to this. There's anger, but they're really quite cool. They're really quite serious about it. I think you've had, I think that probably the political elites have been shocked at the maturity of the public's reaction.
One further point. There have been some incidents in which Muslims and people with dark skin around the country who look like they're from the Mideast have been set upon. One person was killed. People have been beaten up. Americans really need to understand our war is not with our friends from the Mideast. It is not with the Muslim world. Islam is a wonderful religion. These people who did this bear the same relationship to Islam that Torquemada and the people who ran the Spanish Inquisition bear to the rest of Christianity. They are not typical of Islam, and our fight is not with one of the world's great religions, and it's not with the Arab people.
Last three military operations we performed, the Gulf War, Bosnia, and Kosovo, were in support of Muslim peoples. So the U.S. ought to emphasize this fact that we are not biased against Muslims.
Okay, General Odom, Director Woolsey, Ambassador Bremer, three of the best in the business. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani has been widely praised for his calm demeanor and quick action after Tuesday's attack on the World Trade Center. Earlier today, I spoke with Mayor Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us today. And first of all, on behalf of everyone here at CNN and, of course, people all over the world, our deepest condolences to you and all your fellow New Yorkers on this horrible moment in your city's history. Begin, please, by updating us on the progress in the search and rescue operation.
Well, the progress in removing the debris and the structural damage has been actually monumental. I flew over the site yesterday, and it's very different than it was even the day before. We've removed over 20,000 tons of debris. About 1,200 trucks have gone through, and so that the site is more controllable now from the point of view of relief and rescue efforts. I wish I could report more progress in saving people, which, except for the first day, we have not had progress. We haven't given up hope yet. And the experts tell us that there still is some hope that we could find people. But, you know, we would be, I think, all much happier if we were finding and saving more human beings. My firefighters and police officers and the people that Governor Pataki has given us from the state and the federal people, they're all there. Getting rid of the debris and the rubble is part of it, but the thing that's really driving them is they're hoping to be able to find survivors, and they haven't had any success in the last couple of days.
What do you need most, Mr. Mayor, right now? Do you need more volunteers to come to New York City and help in this operation?
We actually don't. The showing of support and the volunteers that have come here, and even those that have come here and actually there's nothing for them to do right now, has been wonderful for the spirit of the city. It's kind of like we're all embracing each other. America is embracing each other, and that show of support is enormously important. But right now, it's more targeted expertise that we need as opposed to large numbers of people. And the very best thing for people to do, rather than to just volunteer, is to make donations to charities that are obviously legitimate charities if they want. And then if called upon, either by the city, the state, or the federal government to help, well then obviously we need their help. We have help from the state of New York and Governor Pataki. We have help from President Bush. And volunteer help would actually not be very useful right now, although the emotion and the spirit of it has been enormous in sustaining the people of the city.
People all over the world, Mr. Mayor, are watching. When you say you need help in what you'd call targeted expertise, what does that mean? Because people around the world want to help if they can.
Relief and recovery right now. In other words, moving out the debris, the rubble, the contractors who are helping us, the construction workers who are helping us, who are experts in being able to deal with disaster sites. Once that is over with, then we're going to move to the phase of reconstructing that area. We have to make plans with the governor, with the people in the city about exactly what we want to do there, but we're going to need a lot of help then. And I also, we obviously need financial help, and we got a great boost with what President Bush did on Friday and the United States Congress did on Friday in putting aside $20 billion for relief and recovery in New York, Pennsylvania, and Washington. But the recovery effort is going to cost a lot more than that in order to rebuild that area to what it was. And I should emphasize that this is not just for New York City. The area that we're talking about, the area that's affected, is the financial capital of the United States and the world. Its direction, its future success, has a lot to do with the success of the American economy. So when people think about investing and helping in that area, whatever part of America they come from, it's going to have an impact on their economy as to how successfully it's rebuilt. And there we need the help of the United States Congress.
I was going to say, do you think it's a good idea? There's been a lot of talk in New York, elsewhere, about rebuilding the World Trade Center Twin Towers. Is that a good idea?
You know, I think that is worth a lot of consideration. In other words, the exact plans for this area should be given a great deal of thought, as opposed to just jumping immediately in the emotion of what we're feeling right now on a plan that we're going to seize on. And I'm going to work with Governor Pataki to put together a group of people who, over the course of the next month or so, can be done quickly, but not right at this minute, to come up with a plan for what the future of that area should be. A lot of people should be consulted: the city leaders, the state leaders, the families of the people affected. I think we have to listen to them also as to what they're going to need. So that's a very, very worthwhile consideration. But I would caution people not to make an immediate decision. There's too much emotion right now, and it's worth a great deal of thought.
How worried should New Yorkers be right now about their safety, especially when they go to other striking landmarks in New York, like the Empire State Building or the Statue of Liberty? How worried should they be?
Well, I mean, whether you tell people to be worried or not, some people are going to be worried and some people aren't going to be worried. But I've tried to think about the best example or analogy we can have to what we're going through. And this isn't a perfect one, but I think it works. The people of Britain and the people of London went through this during the Battle of Britain. And in fact, it was even different in the sense that they were being bombed every day. And what they did was they took precautions, they were careful, they had bomb shelters, they had hospitals, but they went about their lives and they didn't let the Nazi assault stop their way of life. And we're not under, you know, consistent bombardment in any way. We've had a tremendous attack, worse actually than any single attack during the Battle of Britain. But there's that fear. There's that fear that something like that could happen again. It should not stop us from going about our way of life. That's what they want to do. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make us fearful. And I think that most New Yorkers will. I've traveled around the city last night, and people were in restaurants, people went to plays, people were eating outside. And here's a way you can help us. Come to New York, go to a play, right? Go to a Yankee or Met game, come and spend some money here. And that's great. You come here and use New York for all the purposes that New York is the capital of the world, and show these cowardly terrorists they can't stop us.
The trading on the Wall Street markets are going to resume tomorrow. Any special problems that you can envisage?
Well, getting the stock market open for tomorrow and the mercantile exchange open for tomorrow is an example of how we can rebuild and rebuild very, very quickly. And it was a very difficult task. We're very hopeful that it's going to work really well and then continue. But it's important to get the stock exchange open, and it's important to get the mercantile exchange open, because it has a big impact on the American economy. And I would just unabashedly say to people, show confidence. Show confidence in the fact that we have the strongest economy